Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, we are going to be turning this is fire hose, into a ring. And it's going to require a little bit of special equipment, and I'll get into that. But for now, let's go ahead and get started. So my first step is going to be cutting up the hose into manageable sized pieces. These are going to be pieces that will fit into the compression mold that I'm going to be making later on. Now I'm cutting each piece of the hose into two separate rectangles, and then you can see here I just stack it all up and you can kind of picture how the plate is going to work, and then I'll cut a ring shape out of that. And so now the next step is I wanted to dye this. I thought it'd be cool to dye it kind of a fire hose red or fire engine red. And so I've got this red dye specifically for dyeing synthetic fibers. And that's important for this because I believe this is nylon that they make the outside of the hose out of. And so it's really tricky to dye a lot of the synthetic materials. So even with this synthetic dye, it was kind of tricky. And you'll see my strategy later to aid in that was to add some pigment to the resin we add. But I'll get into that later. But it did end up working pretty well actually. Now this next part of the project, you'll see me cutting up a piece of HDPE, and I just ordered this big huge slab off of Amazon, but what you can do is you can just go to Walmart and you can buy a cutting board. They're usually made out of HDPE, just make sure you're getting the white one that's kind of like that milk jug material. And so this is really good for mold making. It's a really good non-stick material, and it's pretty easy to cut up. So I just cut all the pieces that I need. You can see I'm using my circular saw for this, and then I'm just getting rid of all the burrs and extra just crappy edges. I'm just using this belt sander to do that really quick. And then I'll just use screws to hold the whole thing together. That way, if I've got a piece of resin that's kind of stuck down in here, I can just unscrew the whole thing, and I can really easily get our piece, once it's casted, out of the mold. And I should probably explain the whole point of what I'm doing here. Yes, this is going to be a mold in which we put the fire hose pieces and then the resin, of course. But what's important about it is it's actually going to be a compression mold. And so you can see I make just a general box shape out of it, but the trick and what makes this actually special and what makes it so we can actually make materials like this where there's not a ton of excess resin is the special top plate I make for it. And you'll see me do that. Basically, I get a piece of our HDPE that'll fit down into our mold blank here. And then I need to cut a bunch of little holes in it, and for that I just use a small little drill bit. And what that'll do is it'll allow me to put pressure on top of the resin as well as the fire hose material, and it'll squeeze the fabric down so it's a super solid, super flat, and just really dense plate, and it'll get rid of all the excess resin. So the resin will be able to seep up through the top surface of it through those holes, but the fire hose, that'll stay in place. It'll get really nice and compressed. That'll give us a durable material and one that's mostly fabric, so it's more fire hose than it is resin. So that's the whole purpose of this. If you're wondering or if you're curious, that's why we're doing it, and it is kind of instrumental in being able to create this whole project. So that's specifically in this video, that's why I chose to include this part of it, because it's a very important piece to the overall end result that we're going for.
Sexual and bad, and now you got this on your conscience, because now I'm unresponsive.
All right, so we've got our mold finished here. Took a little while, but we got it done. I've already noticed a few things that I'd like to change in a future version, but I'll go into that more later. And so I've got here mold release. This will help the resin separate from our mold later. So this is fairly important. It just makes things a lot easier for you. So I'm spraying the whole inside of the mold. And then our plate we've got here, spray that as well. I'll just remember to put it down that way. So we've got that done. Now our fire hose, after I dyed it, I put it in the oven to cure it faster. or to dry it out faster. And the rubber backing, and I didn't mention this earlier, it has this rubber inside because it's waterproof, obviously. And I was worried about that the layers wouldn't hold together because of that. But I found out when you heat it up in the oven, it becomes really easy to separate. So that solved that problem, and that makes things a lot easier because now I don't have to worry about that. So now all we have to do is weigh out our 2 resins. I need to add red color pigment, and then we'll just mix it all together and be ready to go. So these steps are really straightforward. I'm just mixing equal halves of resin, and then I'm adding a bunch of color pigment to it, and it's this bright red color. And I'm doing this because I'm kind of worried that the dye that I dyed the fire hose with is not going to be enough to give this ring a really good red color, and so that's why I'm doing that. Just any extra red color we can get, I'm going for. And then you can see the way I add the clamps onto the top, that squishes all of our extra resin out, and then I just pour the rest out. All right, we'll give this a few hours to set, then we can take it out of the mold, then we'll need another 18 or 24 hours probably until it's ready to work with. All right, so this is a couple days later, and I'm actually able to start working with the material, and from the looks of it, it looked really good. We got a really solid block. There didn't seem to be any air pockets or anything like that, so I was really hopeful for it, but you can kind of guess I'm kind of foreshadowing stuff. You can see as I cut into it, it just fell apart, and you can see that right here in this footage where I'm trying to cut a ring blank out of it. It seemed like the resin didn't really even soak into there, and that turned out to be exactly what it was. The issue is I wasn't using an infusion resin, and that's really basic stuff. If one of you guys out there has worked with like carbon fiber or fiberglass, just infusing resin, it's a really basic thing, and the properties of it is it's basically thin enough or runny enough that it can soak into a lot of materials, and what I was using was too thick, so it's more like honey almost, and so it just wasn't able to soak into those fibers. And so I was able to actually order the resin that I needed, but I was able to get a lot of help from a guy on Instagram, and his username is True North Micarta, and I found him on there because I was researching just working with fire hose in general. I didn't know if anyone was doing it, and he actually makes micarta out of it, so exactly what we're trying to do in this video, and he was able to give me some really helpful tips. So I was able to talk to him. He was very helpful. Basically, yeah, it did come down to just I was using the wrong resin, and so I just ordered some new infusion resin, but I thought it'd be really cool to showcase some of his materials, so I ordered a couple of pieces from him, and I like this really nice, it's almost it's blue, but almost kind of aqua teal color, I guess you'd say. And so I just thought this color was amazing. So I wanted to make a ring out of this, and his stuff, it's just super good quality. You can see the block of material that I started out with just looks so much prettier than what I was actually able to make. And so I just wanted to show you guys just kind of the best case scenario for what is all possible with this fire hose micarta. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking this teal material, and then I'm going to cut a ring blank out of it, and you can see just right off the bat this thing held together, which passes the first test. The first one just fell into pieces when I tried to cut the blank out, so already we're off to a much better start. And then just from here on out, it was super great to work with. The weave on the actual fire hose is really dense, and you can see just how dramatic it looks. It's really cool. It's almost like just like a super fat denim is what it looks like, and so it's just really cool, and it's got an interesting look to it. And that comes with kind of a downfall, not really a downfall, but it's kind of fuzzy. The fibers will kind of come out more than you would see on a more dense fabric, and so you just have to be a little bit careful when you're sanding it. You got to get everything smoothed down, and you just have to do a really thorough sanding job. So you just got to make sure that everything is sanded smooth. You get rid of all those excess fibers that are hanging off, but once you get through that, it's pretty much like any other material. It's a lot of fun to work with, and you can see once I got the blank cut out, I just needed to sand up the inside. I sanded that all the way from as low as 200 grit. I started lower with my Dremel, but I started at 200 grit. I worked my way all the way up to 2000 grit. I made sure it was super smooth and really shiny, but then I didn't want to polish this because it was this fabric, and because it was having those, it would fray. It seemed like if I were to hit this on the polishing wheel, it would end up getting the fabric itself kind of dirty, and I didn't want that. And so we're not doing any polishing on this. Instead, I'm switching straight to I guess it is a polish, but it's called just a CA finish. And so what I do is I take this super thin super glue. That's literally what it's called. It's super thin, very viscous, and so it's easy to get a nice finish on things with it. And so I just take a nice dab of this, put it on the paper towel, and then I very carefully, and this does take quite a bit of technique to not mess it up, but you can just dab it on the ring while the lathe is spinning fast enough, and you can get a really beautiful surface that doesn't require any polishing. So that's what you see me do there. We're able to get the inside, and then I switch to the outside, sand that up, do the same exact steps, do the super glue finish on the outside, and this ring just looks amazing. And I seriously mean this. Like, we started with just such a basic, literally fire hose, and we're able to get this ring that I think is so cool. And you can see in the light the way that it reflects off of just the translucent parts of it. It's just such an interesting ring, and the colors of it look cool, and the pattern on it is dramatic enough that it really stands out from almost any other material or even micarta that I've ever worked with. So I'm just really happy with the way this turned out, and I'm super thankful for True North micarta. I started this project, it was a couple months ago, and I just abandoned it because, you know, I'd spent so much time. I made that mold, I did all that work, and it didn't work at all. And so it was just kind of depressing, but I was able to figure it out. I still haven't gone and used the infusion resin. It actually arrived, but I want to do a similar project with maybe some carbon fiber scraps in the future, so you'll see me doing that. But huge shout out to True North micarta on Instagram. He was instrumental in making this video possible, and this material's awesome. So hit him up on Instagram if you're looking for some really cool, really unique materials to work with, namely fire hose micarta. Check him out. But anyways, guys, I just want to thank you so much for watching. This was a really fun project, one that I've been trying to put out forever, and so I'm just so happy to finally be able to share it with you guys. If you guys are interested in these, I think these could be really cool on the website. They're a pretty simple ring, so they could be fairly affordable, and maybe we could do them in just a couple different colors. But I think it'd be pretty cool to donate some of the proceeds to firemen or just other emergency services, policemen, all of that. I think it'd just be a really cool cause, something that we could kind of build a community around and just make a really cool lineup of really interesting, really beautiful rings that are also helping out, doing some good in the world. So if you're interested in that, let me know what your comments and thoughts are about that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Of course, follow me on Instagram, follow True North micarta on Instagram. He posts some great stuff there. That's going to be it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this one. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you can. If you already are, that's great. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.